Bernanos, I believe, is considered a literary masterpiece, and now Ignatius Press has released a new English translation so that American readers can experience the full story. Dana, thank you so much for being with us.
Welcome.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I hate to disappoint you, but it's raining in Los Angeles.
Oh, that's a shame.
We brought the weather to you. We just
Well, we need the rain.
Yeah, yeah, it actually is good to get the rain.
And for 20 years, I lived in New York, and I
you
agree
did? Okay.
October is the best month of the year.
It is. Yeah, that's great. I agree with you.
Yeah, wow. Well, Dana, great to have you here. And maybe before we talk about the Diary of a Country Priest, could you explain what your duties were as Poet Laureate of California?
Well, when I was appointed Poet Laureate of California, it became apparent to me that compared to any other job I had, the Poet Laureate had no duties. He had to show up a couple of times. And so I decided, in my typical fashion, to create my own work. And so I decided I would become the first Poet Laureate to visit all 58 counties of California and do an event in each one.
Wow.
Most of them were rural, and a lot of them had never had any poetry event in their entire history.
That's incredible.
It was fun. It was one of the great trips of my life.
Let's get into the book itself, too. For those who might not have heard of A Diary of a Country Priest, could you tell us a little bit about it, give us a little synopsis of it?
Well, George Bernanos' Diary of a Country Priest is one of the greatest modern French novels. And incidentally, it became one of the greatest French films of all time when Robert Bresson filmed it shortly after Bernanos' death. It's a very simple novel. It's about a young priest who's in ill health who comes to North France and has his first parish. He feels completely overwhelmed by the job, and everyone he meets in some ways is either depressed or a kind of scoundrel. And so he feels completely incompetent of turning this into what he had dreamed of as his first parish. He's met with resistance, failure, and sometimes outright hate. And so it's his diary chronicling this. And what the reader senses fairly early on, and it proves to be true, is that this priest is actually dying of cancer. So this is not a feel-good novel, but it's a book about grace, about suffering, and about the difficulty of the priestly vocation.
Absolutely. Wow. So then why is it a big deal that the novel has been translated into English? Like, what kind of differences would we see and readers see between the version and the original version?
It's a very easy question to answer, although a year ago I would not have been able to answer it. I did not know. I was one of the millions of American Catholics who read this book, long ago, who discovered that when it was translated in the United States, the original translator cut a lot of it out because the priest is in some ways is complaining about his parishioners, or at least observing some of the stuff that the parishioners do. I think it was felt to be too hard hitting for pious Catholics, of the post-war era. So about 30 pages were cut out. And so this new translation that Ignatius Press offered, Michael Tobin is the translator, it's a revelation. You're reading a different novel. The translation is better, and suddenly all these passages that you have never saw before, even if you thought you knew the novel well, appear. And so it is a big thing. I mean, we're reading the full text of one of the masterpieces of Catholic literature for the first time in English.
That's great. And interestingly, we never learn the name of the country priest in the book. And why do you?
Very strange.
I know. Why do you think he decided to do that? Yeah.
I think that Bernanos is a very profound and I think in some ways mystical Catholic, and I think he wants to make the priest a sort of everyman, so that that everyone who reads this understands what the book is about is the difficulty of leading the right life, a sanctified life in this messy world that we find ourselves in. I mean, the people that he should help him most are the people who work against him, who betray him. And the novel ends with his death, but the death at the very last minute, becomes affirming.
Mm. Wow. And why should Catholics read fiction and poetry? Like, what can it do for the soul?
Well, I believe that literature is one of the missing pieces right now in American culture because we tend to look at our faith as we do, we go to Mass, we do the sacraments, we pray, and then when we talk about our faith, we tend to talk our faith in terms of theology.
Mm.
Theology is very convincing, but it's abstract. What literature does is allow us to feel and witness our faith and the issues of our faith uh, in a human way. We understand it emotionally, imaginative, even physically. We
Yeah.
feel this priest's physical pain. He can barely eat, and so he basically eats. And the symbolism of this is probably not hard to fathom. He can only eat bread and wine
Mm.
and a little bit of sugar. Anything else upsets his stomach, and so we understand, in some ways that we feel his pain, we feel his struggle, and I think it's the humanizing, direct, intuitive thing because Catholics do not go through life as angels.
Mm.
We're not invisible and corporal. We have bodies, we have lives, and it's important for us to understand the struggles of being incarnate
Mm.
in this fallen world. That's what literature does. That's why Dante never goes out of fashion. Why Gerard Manley Hopkins is so powerful in his effect on anybody who reads him, especially students. And
Absolutely.
and George Bernanos' Diary of a Country Priest is one of the most powerful evocations of the drama of living a vocation in a world which doesn't necessarily help you towards God.
Incredible. And I cannot agree more when it comes to literature within our Catholic faith. So, where can people buy a copy of the book?
Well, nowadays there's so few bookstores and so few Catholic bookstores. When I was in New York, when I lived in Washington, I would walk right by a Catholic bookstore, and I was always in there buying books. I think it's hard now, so I think you're probably going to be buying it on the internet. But if
Mm.
you do want to read this novel, get the new version from Ignatius because the
Mm.
translation is better, the text is more complete, it has a wonderful preface, and so you'll just have a better experience. And you could probably get it in 24 hours nowadays.
Yeah, that's very true. So our viewers can see it on the screen, ignatius.com, to get the Diary of a Country Priest. Thank you, Dana, so much for
I'm,
being with us.
I'm so delighted to have a chance to talk about such a great book.
Thank you.